Welcome to the Lord and Richards Show, a program that will enable you to become more financially independent and prosperous from a biblical point of view. Tune in each week to learn how to prosper through good markets and bad. Now, here's our co-hosts, Colin Richards, your biblical investment advisor, and Dylan Schoonover.
Welcome into the Lord and Richards Show. I'm Dylan Schoonover, joined by CEO and founder Colin Richards of Lord and Richards. Thank you so much for being here. You know, Colin, immediately what comes to mind is, do you know, we're talking taxes today, and I'm wondering, what's the difference between a Rottweiler and a tax auditor? Do you know?
No, I have no idea, Dylan.
Well, eventually the Rottweiler is going to let go, right? So we want to make sure that we are not dealing with any tax auditors, and we want to mitigate our taxes as much as possible, especially for high savers. And I said high savers, not necessarily high earners. So when we're talking taxes today, we're going to look at different ways of how we're going to minimize taxes. So just hit me with it. Give me your best strategies right out of the gate of how are we going to mitigate taxes as much as possible as we head to retirement and we've saved a good amount of money.
Well, Switzerland is a great option, or
I like
the
that.
Caymans. But if we want to shift gears to legal options, then what we want to talk about is changing your money from forever tax to never again tax. That's always got to be front of mind. When you think taxes, you need to think, how do I avoid paying more than my fair share, right? We pay on our income our whole life. Should we really have to keep paying then on what we've set aside and already, been accumulating? And unfortunately, the government says yes. But the good news is that there are still ways that we can dodge that bullet. We can get that Rottweiler off of us and enjoy, in some cases, with enough planning, even a tax-free retirement.
That would be wonderful. But it gets a little more complicated as we get older with taxes. You know, when you grow up and you get your first job, yes, you got taxes coming out of your first paycheck. And I think there might be the shock for the young person, they're like, wait a minute, I thought I just got the money that I earned. And no, it doesn't work like that. But when you get older, you start having investments and portfolios and you get into things like income tax, but you have capital gains, you have state taxes, you have estate taxes. So let's kind of dive through each one of those with some strategies. So talk us through, especially for people who have a lot of money and they've accumulated assets through the market that have grown a lot. How do they deal with those capital gains?
Okay, so we're referring to the different kinds of money that people can have within the tax system, right? I think of different kinds of money not just as the investments, right? I've got stocks, I've got bonds, I've got this, but I think different kinds of money in terms of their taxability. So let's clear the field and describe, first of all, your money that's just taxed ordinarily. That's like the income pay check that you get each week. Once you retire, you still have money taxed that way. It comes from your IRAs, your 401ks, and believe it or not, even your Social Security can be taxed that way. We think of Social Security as a tax. Now I'm getting taxed on a tax. But really what Social Security was a forced retirement program, and it was designed to do what it does, which is provide income, therefore income tax. But then we have other kinds of money that is tax deferred. So you're not paying taxes now, but you're going to pay taxes later. That's your IRAs and 401ks before you're forced by the government or you choose to withdraw. And then finally, we've got that tax-free bucket, that bucket where money can go in and grow and it never gets taxed again.
That sounds good.
Yeah, I like that one too.
Yeah. We've heard the tax bucket strategy. Sometimes they'll say tax boxes or, tax placements where they kind of color different things. Different advisors do that. But obviously we're looking to go from left to right if you're thinking about taxable, tax deferred, and then tax free, certainly. But for us at Lord and Richards, walk us through kind of what you're doing and what you're seeing. Are most people coming in with a lot of money that's not in that tax-free bucket? Is it sitting other places usually?
The vast majority of folks have been following the prevailing wisdom, right? Conventional wisdom is conventional because it generally works. And what people have been taught is, okay, if you want to save taxes now, then put your money aside in tax-deferred vehicles like IRAs and 401ks. And so we've done well. We've done what we were taught. And in some cases, our companies even matched that. So we were able to double down on some of those savings. But the problem is, one day you're going to get really grumpier about taxes than you are now. And I can tell you my experience.
Get off my lawn.
That's right. My experience is if we're moving you from working to retirement and we don't want that drop in lifestyle, then you're going to remain in a pretty good bracket. Okay, if you've been starting saving in your 20s and 30s tax deferred and you've saved all these years and now you're in a higher bracket when you have to take it out, that's not very exciting, especially when you're older. I know people who are tax deferred their whole life, thrilled that that happened, and then suddenly realize now I've got to pay, and I'm in the highest bracket, or I'm in one of the higher brackets.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like any fun. And obviously, we've talked many times off camera, but everybody thinks that they're going to go down to a lower tax bracket, like you started to touch on, but it's not necessarily the case, right?
No, as a matter of fact, if you sustain your lifestyle going forward, you'll remain in the bracket that you were in during your working years, because you have all of these tax-deferred sources that are just treated like income now coming out. And we're in an historically low tax environment right now by historic standards. We know we've seen tax brackets get as high as 93%. So pretty amazing. We had that as a trivia question in one of our recent events.
Ronald Reagan was around, I believe, making movies.
That's right. But then he shifted gears into tax savings mode, right? And dropped taxes. And that's when we saw things come down. And today we're experiencing still some of that benefit. But when can we trust the government to have our best interests at heart when developing a tax plan? Well, I'm not sure
Maybe
we
never.
can count on that. Yeah.
The cynicist in me might say never. I don't know.
I think the realist, right? And so if taxes are at some of their lowest levels, we have nowhere to go but up. And so not only could you see yourself in a higher bracket in retirement because of just the natural affluence that you've built up, but also because of government policy. And then there's one more. It's an unfortunate one, but if we're widowed, if we lose our spouse, we move into the single brackets, which if you look those up, are nowhere near as generous as the married brackets.
Yeah, there's a lot of incentives to stay married and not die, even if you don't like him anymore.
Yeah, just don't tell the IRS that he's gone. That would be to your favor.
There's actually a clip of that I've seen on a show one time, and they said, well, I couldn't keep collecting my taxes if Harry was not here anymore, so they put him in a freezer or something and just said he wasn't gone. Don't do that, folks.
Not a good tax
That's a
strategy.
TV show. It's not real. But okay, let's talk solutions a little bit. How do we solve these problems? Roth may be a good option, right?
Yeah, a Roth IRA came along later than the traditional IRA, and it was a great invention. It's not been around that long compared to the IRA, and it was designed so that you could pay taxes now as opposed to later. And as you can imagine, when people first heard that, they probably thought, oh, I don't want to do that because just like my CPA says each year, I want to save taxes right now. Well, if we can eat our vegetables a little bit and pay taxes on the seed today and put after-tax money into your Roth IRA, it'll never be taxed again, even after the growth. So we save taxes on the harvest. We pay taxes on the seed, we save taxes on the harvest down the road when it's much bigger.
Yeah, that sounds really good. And when we come back from the break, we're gonna dive much deeper into that and how you wanna make sure you're maximizing your tax savings. This is Dylan Schoonover, Colin Richards. We'll be back on the Lord and Richards Show.
You're watching The Lord and Richards Show, a program that can help you become more financially independent. Tune in to learn how you could become prosperous during good times and bad.
Just pick up the phone and give us a call at 720-372-0400. That's 720-372-0400 for your complimentary retirement freedom review. Or check us out online at lordandrichards.com.
Welcome back from the break. We are talking taxes today, and I don't know which is worse, death or taxes, but they're both certain. I'll tell you that, Colin. So we are coming back and looking here at your Roth conversion strategies. You're talking about paying money on the seed instead of the harvest, and the harvest is usually, or maybe always, but usually going to have a lot more money at the end of the road. So it makes a lot more sense if the tax environment is low, which you're saying right now, historically is a tax environment that's low, correct?
Yeah, I'm a bargain hunter, and I know a lot of our listeners and viewers are as well. My wife is the quintessential. She'll spend $10 in gas to save $5 on a clothing item, or she'll spend $10 in gas.
That math is not mathy.
The math is not very mathy there. But what I'm talking about is taxes being on sale, such as they are. Not only should folks who are just starting their Roth journey or their savings journey be putting more money into their Roth IRA, whether that's at work as a Roth 401k or their individual, do that. Start setting money aside, eat your vegetables now, pay taxes on the seed. And then later on, if you've accumulated a tax-deferred pile, and now you're like, well, what do I do? Because everything I have now is going to be taxable in retirement. Well, good news is in all of its wisdom and grace, the government allows us to convert money from a traditional IRA or 401k into a Roth. And now there are limits. You can't earn a certain amount of money and still contribute to Roth IRAs, but we have a backdoor strategy where you can contribute to your Roth, to your Roth 401k, but you can also contribute to a traditional IRA and then convert it later. And so there's all kinds of ways to do it, but here's the key. Every time you make a conversion, and we're talking about a financial experience, not a religious one, okay? Every time you make a conversion, you're going to pay taxes. So choose your time and your strategy wisely to keep that conversion in a lower bracket so that later on you can withdraw when you're in a higher bracket, but you can withdraw tax-free.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're the expert, RMDs. So before RMDs hit, there is a window that you guys can do some things. Because I know a lot of people are sitting out here listening and watching the show saying, well, all my money's sitting in IRA money. I don't have any money in Roth money right now. Am I stuck? But there's a window, especially from say 55 to about 73, 75, depending on their age with RMDs, that you have some strategies for them to help, right?
Absolutely. So just to clarify, an RMD, that's our jargon. It means required minimum distribution. And it's when the IRS shows up at your door with a pistol and says, you have to withdraw your money now. Well, the IRS has given you a lifetime to defer taxes, and now they want to collect. And so depending on your age, basically around age 73, we're going to start having to take money out each year. It starts as a relatively small percentage and builds. And if we wait until that exact moment, then we're kind of stuck. We've got to take the RMDs. But if we get ahead of that curve, we can start converting money little by little. And that's generally the way that you want to do it. Now, some people will watch the show and they'll get super excited and they'll say, oh, I'm going to go convert my whole portfolio all at once. Shooting yourself up into the maximum bracket, between state and federal, that's going to be pretty big dollars, over 40%, and therefore ruining the whole concept. The idea is sit down with a qualified tax planner, which we have in abundance at Lord & Richards, and figure out how much you can convert each year and still remain in a reasonably low bracket. And by reasonably low, I don't like to get out of the 20% range, okay? So I like to keep people in the 20s or lower if we can. If you've, for example, gotten between jobs, you may not be thinking about this, you're just thinking about getting another job, but it's a great time to do some converting strategies because you've got less ordinary income in that year and you may be in a lower bracket. And the list goes on and on of things that we can do.
Yeah, that seems exciting. Obviously, you want to be able to mitigate wherever you can because nobody wants to pay more than they have to. And, some pessimists out there might say, well, are the goalposts going to move on us? What's going to happen with the federal government? Did the one big beautiful bill or any other legislation upcoming, is there anything to be concerned about there? Are you seeing anything politically landscaped-wise that would change your strategies in Texas?
Well, not yet. From what we see, can we always trust the government to not go evil is kind of what we're thinking, right? Are they going to change all the rules of the game? Well, what happens is tax-deferred or tax-free vehicles like a Roth IRA and some of the other really fancy strategies that we like to use with our clients are typically protected. And when the law changes and they say, okay, we're going to change the rules, typically what you have is this period before and after the law. And so what doesn't happen is, for example, let's say the government went evil and they said, okay, all Roths are now taxable as ordinary income. Well, it would apply to future contributions, right? And we've actually seen things like that happen where they change the rules of the game, but we have what's called grandfathering in, right? Not just the warm fuzzy image of grandfather, but also the fact that everything that's gone before is usually treated as it has been.
Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah, because I know we have people come into the office sometimes and they're like, well, yeah, this is nice for now, but this could happen later. And so it's good to know that the grandfather strategy should hold true for the money that they've already got. And if you haven't converted, you probably want to consider that. Let's move a little bit over to charitable giving. That's certainly a taxable strategy or a man of faith. You talk about your faith often on the show. How does charity play into the fact that it could really benefit you from a tax perspective?
Well, it's a device from a tax planning perspective. It's also just a way to do good in the world, right? So at Lord and Richards, we're literally named Lord and Richards because I see God as the senior partner in our practice. And the reason I formed the company years ago was to enable us to help our clients and to help our teammates that we work together with and others to achieve this abundance financially so we can do good throughout the world with what God's provided us. And so we have the Foundation for Global Education, which is a nondescript name designed to allow us to operate in parts of the world where if it had a religious connotation to it, it would be rejected. And so we operate primarily in Asia, where we're able to provide not just the good news of God's love, but also housing, medical treatment. We take whole villages that have been dispossessed and rebuild those villages, whether it's because of floods or famine or war. Those are the areas that we're working with, and I'll be excited to be there in just a few months to come alongside of our partners. Of course, safe. I'll stay in the safe areas. But I mentioned a foundation. That's just one strategy. For example, I chose the vehicle of a foundation because you can take money and gift it to a foundation or a nonprofit, and suddenly taxes are off the table. It's no longer an issue. One quick strategy. If you're going to leave behind money that's in an IRA or a 401k, it's tax deferred. If despite all of the strategies we put together, there's going to be a little pile there, we call that a tax time bomb. Rather than give that particular piece to family, that's a great one to give to a charity, a church, or a nonprofit, because the taxes just go away and they get the entire amount. And so you can completely alleviate it. But there's just scores of ways that we can do this.
Is that unlimited?
Yeah, you can give whatever you want away at the end of your life to charity. As a matter of fact, you can give during your life to charity. That's another strategy, is how do I defer or, eliminate taxes during my lifetime?
Yeah, that's why you see sometimes libraries get a big check coming in the mail sometimes from somebody who is really touched by the librarian or whatever they were working with. Always amazes me when it's like, yes, the library just got $4 million. It's like, wow, that's going to be a lot of books. So.
That's right, a lot of books. And sometimes it's because the parents don't want to spoil the next generation, right? And they're worried about leaving an unwieldy sum of money. But there are a lot of ways to allow the next generation to participate in that and not necessarily just give it away. That's why I've chosen the vehicle of a foundation. Others can use trusts and so forth that allow your next generation to participate in the giving that you started while you were alive.
Yeah, that's nice. You leave a great lasting legacy for yourself and your children that way, while controlling it from the grave even.
Yeah, it's kind of a creepy image, like a hand coming out of the grave. But yeah, the idea is you thought in advance before you died and were able to perpetuate good long after you're gone.
Nice. Well, when we come back from the break, we're going to put a wrap on taxes and strategies around that. We'll see you again here shortly on the Lord and Richards Show.
You're watching the Lord and Richards Show, a program that can help you become more financially independent. Tune in to learn how you could become prosperous during good times and bad.
Just pick up the phone and give us a call at 720-372-0400. That's 720-372-0400 for your complimentary retirement freedom review. Or check us out online at lordandrichards.com.
And welcome back to the Lord and Richards Show. Pleased to have Colin Richards, CEO and founder, with us. Join us for our final segment today, talking about how high savers can minimize taxes. So, I've got an idea. What about you just up and move to a state where there's no state tax? How's that going to work?
That actually works great. I actually have clients who will relocate to a state, take Florida with no state income tax, places like that. Wyoming's a favorite, if you enjoy the Western life. And as a matter of fact, that's a corporate strategy. Places around the country that don't charge certain taxes are havens for corporations as well as individuals.
Yeah, I think we saw Elon Musk, up and move to Texas for that advantage.
Yes, along with all his exes who live there.
Yes, Elon believes in having lots of children from lots of people, but that's another discussion for another day, I think. But in all seriousness, talking about taxes, and if you've saved a lot of money, there are mitigation strategies that you can do, and obviously want to do them in a legal capacity. But what are some things that jump off, when our team's looking at tax returns and looking at someone's investments? What sticks out right away for the investor to go, oh, I see this very often that people don't realize and they can take advantage of this.
Well, in our last segment, we talked a little bit about charitable giving, and one of the things that you can do to continue down that road, because any money that you're giving to the charity is completely tax-free, is to set up a donor advised fund. So similar to the foundation strategy, it's a strategy where we, as your guide and advisor, will assist you in setting up a fund that you advise on where the money's going to go. Now, the reality is it always goes where you advise it to go. And so if you want to give to your church or to a camp or to the Boys and Girls of America, whatever you're wanting to give, the Children's Hospital, it will go there. But the cool part is you can give in the year when it gives you the most tax benefit. And so we can stack up the benefits in the years when it's most important. Maybe if you work a job where your income fluctuates and it's like, oh, I sold a lot of houses this year, that's the year to pile the money in, and then you can distribute it over time as it's needed. Whereas when we're giving straight to the organization, right, we get the deduction when we give it to them. And you might say, well, I don't know that I'm ready to give that much at this time. The donor advised fund can serve as a tax-free holding tank for you.
Okay, and is that tank there forever, or you get to pull that money back out ever and then pay taxes on it again if you wanted to?
Once you give away your money, it's given away.
Gone.
Yeah, so the only way to pull that back out would be some shady under the table deal, which we don't want to do, right? And so the key here is, you want to set aside money that you don't need for your own personal living expenses, but that we're doing for the philanthropy and for the giving purposes as well as the tax purposes.
Sure. And how do you know, when someone walks into the office, how do you know if, they are of like mind to be able to go that route? Because some people, I think of like the illustration at Christmas time with Scrooge and wanting to keep all his money, but it actually ends up costing people more if they don't look to do some strategies like that, right?
It does. And it really comes out when we sit down and have this warm conversation around your goals, dreams, and values. And some people will express in that conversation, we try to volunteer or we try to support this organization. Those become natural ways that people then can build their charitable contributions. Others may see it just from a purely tax perspective, and that's fine. And we'll still introduce a strategy even if they're not already doing that. It's not that you already have to be a philanthropist or a giver. But in many cases, what we're doing is just kind of piggybacking on their own desire. And we have a conversation around legacy too. So this is the living part. But when you pass on, I will ask people, do you hope the last check bounces? And I've got a group that says that absolutely, the last check should bounce. And we can do that at Lord & Richards. But then I got a whole other group that says, no, we have specific goals for our children, our grandchildren, or charity that we want to support after we're gone.
Yeah, you talk a lot about abundance, and I think that's significant both with money and with life. And having an abundant life can lead to an abundance of assets, but not always. But on the opposite side, a lot of times having an abundance of assets can really lead to an opportunity to bless a lot of people. Would you say so?
Yeah, I would say that we, especially here in America, live at a standard far above the vast majority of the world. Most of the world lives at less than $2 a day. That's over 50% is the average. Now, in America, most of us are living way above that. As a matter of fact, the average is $70 a day, which doesn't sound like a lot when you add it all up, but when you contrast 35 times more what most of the global population, it really means that there's needs at home, there's needs all around the world. And if it would be not only a tax benefit to you, but if it would also bring to your life an abundance and bring to your life a sense of contribution to the great needs of the world, I think that's a fulfilling life.
Yeah, I think so. And how do those that are in or near retirement, as they're coming to a close of life, how do they avoid landing a big estate or tax burden on their children? Because we think of things like Prince. Everybody knows Prince and how he left no will, no trust, no nothing, and it ended up being a massive headache for the family. So how do we avoid that?
Yeah, he died intestate, so he didn't have his estate plan in order. This is critical because at Lord & Richards, we've taken every barrier out of the way. you can actually get a free estate plan at Lord & Richards, which is, I don't know anybody else that's doing that in our neighborhood. And so as a part of our free planning, that includes a free estate plan. Or if you have a more advanced situation, will involve the legal expertise of a local person who can add more and, maybe at a little additional cost. But for most people, this is entirely easy. There's no reason to keep kicking the can down the road. And it's the fusion of an estate plan with a tax plan that allows you to avoid that with your kids. I call it a tax time bomb, leaving an IRA, a 401k, because they have to take that money out. They have to be taxed on it over a certain period of time. Whereas if we can leave something tax-free behind to the family, and there's a lot of tools, trusts, legal devices, as well as investment devices that can get you there.
Yeah, that sounds very important. And we can actually do, for accredited investors that qualify, we can actually do an estate plan, but we can also do tax planning for them and even do their taxes if it warrants it, right?
You're right. We have Lord & Richards Tax Services. We prepare taxes for those clients that are accredited investors, and that simply means that you have a certain amount of assets that you're taking care of for your family.
Wow, fantastic. So if you have questions regarding taxes, please join us. We'd love to have you come in and give us a call or visit our website. This has been the Lord & Richards Show. We'll see you next time.
Just pick up the phone and give us a call at 720-372-0400. That's 720-372-0400 for your complimentary retirement freedom review. Or check us out online at lordandrichards.com.
Take the first step toward securing your financial future. Request an appointment today. Whether you're planning for retirement, managing your wealth, or optimizing your business finances, we're ready to help you achieve your goals. Visit us online at lordandrichards.com for your complimentary retirement freedom review. Investment advisory services offered through Lord & Richards Wealth Management, a registered investment advisor.